In the summer of 1838, a man named Samuel Rowbotham waded into a dead-straight canal in the English countryside, carrying a telescope and a very simple belief, that the Earth was flat. The math was easy. On a globe, 6 miles of water should hide anything near the surface behind a literal hill of ocean. Rowbotham set his telescope 8 inches above the water. A boat rowed 6 miles away, a flag fixed at the same height, and the flag was still there. He wasn't lying, he wasn't crazy. The experiment worked. And the question that will bother you for the rest of this video, what did he actually see? Act 1. The same canal. 2 answers. Rowbotham wasn't a fringe weirdo. He wrote a 430-page book, called himself Parallax, and when he walked into packed lecture halls to debate astronomers, he often won. His logic was simple. Earth's circumference, 25,000 miles. Over 6 miles, the surface should curve down more than 20 feet. A flag 3 feet above water, 6 miles away, should vanish below the horizon. You should not be able to see it. Your telescope presses against your eye. You watch the flag the entire time. It never disappears. It sits on the horizon, like the Earth is a tabletop. The experiment was not wrong. The interpretation was. Decades later, a supporter offered prize money for anyone who could prove curvature on the same canal. Alfred Russel Wallace accepted. Naturalist, trained surveyor, the man who co-discovered evolution. He didn't bring one marker. He brought markers at several heights, high enough that whatever tricked Rowbotham couldn't hide anymore. And the curvature appeared. Measurable. Predictable. The same canal. The same question. 2 experiments, 2 opposite answers. So what happened? Air. Picture a highway on a hot day. Dry asphalt that looks wet because layered air bends light and shifts the image to somewhere it shouldn't be. Same thing that makes a straw look broken in a glass of water, except the glass is 6 miles of cool air sitting on cold canal water. On a warm English day, that air formed invisible lenses. Light from the flag bent downward, followed the curve like a car hugging a road, and delivered the image straight into his telescope. Atmospheric refraction. Rowbotham was watching an honest, physically real, invisible mirage. But here's the deeper problem, the one your brain does every day. Rowbotham thought he was asking, does the Earth curve? But his setup answered a smaller question. Can light from that flag still reach my telescope? Psychologists call this attribute substitution. When a question is too hard, your mind quietly swaps it for an easier one. Not because you're stupid, because the easier question arrives first, already feeling like the truth. His eyes gave him an answer. Physics was asking a different question. Seeing gives you evidence, not yet the explanation. Act 2. The compass of down. Okay, the experiment was a mirage. But let's play it out. Same mass, same radius, just flattened. What would life actually look like? On a flat disk with Earth's mass, gravity at the center is roughly twice what you feel now. A 15-pound bowling ball near the center would feel like 30. Your bathroom scale becomes personally offensive. And that's the most normal place on the disk. Because the moment you step outward, the direction of down begins to move. On a sphere, gravity always pulls straight beneath your feet. On a flat disk, the center of gravity is the North Pole. Everywhere else, gravity pulls toward the middle at an angle. The farther you go, the more it leans. The surface looks perfectly flat, but your body tries to stand perpendicular to gravity, not the ground. Walking outward feels exactly like climbing a slope that isn't there, a giant invisible mountain. The ground says flat. Your muscles disagree. Hang a plumb line at the center, straight down. Walk 1,000 kilometers out, it leans inward. A glass slides off a table that looks level. A loose bottle rolls toward the center of the room, chasing the North Pole. Trees wouldn't grow up. They'd grow diagonally, straining toward the center, trunks leaning sideways as if blown by a wind that doesn't exist. Act 3. The world slides inward. Rain wouldn't fall straight. It would slant toward the Arctic. Every drop, every storm, every river. The oceans would follow, sliding toward the middle, building one massive superstorm ocean around the North Pole. Coastlines would retreat. Ports would lose their water. Cities that have sat on the shore for centuries would wake up landlocked. The atmosphere? Same fate. At the North Pole, you'd be crushed under too much air. At the edges, almost none. Without a molten core, no magnetic dynamo. Without a magnetic field, nothing holds the atmosphere in. It leaks into space. You wouldn't just be breathless, you'd be irradiated. And the sun? Spin the disk like a record player. But a record player cannot make time zones. The same face stays pointed at the sun. To get back sunsets and seasons, you'd need to redesign the entire sky. But the quietest problem is geometry. A sphere always presents the same circular target to sunlight. A flat disk doesn't. A thin, tilted disk intercepts only about 1/4 of the sunlight, 1/4 of the energy. Farms would lose their growing seasons. Wind patterns would rearrange. Ice would spread differently. Rainfall would follow new paths. The world doesn't just go flat. It goes dim.
Act 4. Ask a question shape cannot fake. But you don't have to take anyone's word. Here are 4 things you can check yourself. 4 questions the shape of the Earth cannot cheat on. 1. Watch a ship leave port. The hull disappears first, then the mast. It's sinking over a curve. Sailors have known this for thousands of years. 2. The next lunar eclipse. Every single time in recorded history, the Earth's shadow on the moon is round. The only shape that always casts a round shadow from every angle is a sphere. A disk would cast an oval or a thin line. It never does. 3. Fly south. The North Star sinks and disappears. Entirely new constellations appear. Impossible on a flat plane. Everyone would see the same sky. 4. Eratosthenes, 2,200 years ago. A stick, a shadow, 2 cities, same day, same time. One stick casts no shadow. The sun is directly overhead. One casts a clear one. He measured the difference, did the geometry, and calculated the entire circumference of the Earth, almost perfectly. No NASA, no rocket, just a stick and a question. 4 proofs. 0 authority needed. The Earth tells on itself.
Act 5. The edge was never the problem. So the science is settled. The experiment was a mirage. The physics are impossible. The proof is everywhere. And yet millions still believe. Which means we've arrived at the actual mystery. Why? Remember the question swap from Act 1? That wasn't a one-time mistake. That's a feature of your brain. Every day, when a question is too hard, your mind silently replaces it with one it can answer. Is this person trustworthy? Becomes, do they look like me? Is the Earth round? Becomes, does the ground look curved right now? And the feeling of flat? That's the answer your brain keeps giving. Not because it's right, because it's easy. Then 2 things lock it in. First, the seduction of the secret. Believe you've seen through a lie that fooled billions, and you're no longer just a person. You're awake. Flat Earth isn't just giving you a shape for the planet, it gives you an identity. You can't argue someone out of an identity. Second, distrust that's partly earned. Institutions have lied. But once you decide the authorities are the enemy, every piece of evidence becomes proof of the conspiracy. The rounder the evidence, the deeper the cover-up. And here's the twist that should make all of us a little humble. You and I run the same software. We've all believed things because they felt right. Because our group believed them. Because admitting we were wrong would mean admitting we were the kind of person who could be fooled. Because the easy lie is a luxury. It lands like a gift. It asks nothing. The hard truth is dirt under your fingernails. You have to dig for it. You have to want it. Flat Earth is just that bug, wanting it full volume.
The scary question isn't, how could they believe that? It's, what looks completely obvious to me right now, only because I haven't learned the hidden rule yet? Samuel Rowbotham was not a fool. He trusted his eyes. He just didn't know his eyes could be honestly wrong. The real trap wasn't the mirage. It was the question he asked instead of the one that mattered. The edge was never the biggest problem. The center was. Gravity, air, light. The hidden systems that don't care what shape the ground looks like from where you're standing. Seeing is not understanding. The obvious shape of a thing can be the least important rule underneath it. The Earth is round, not because anyone told you, but because ships sink hull first, and the moon's shadow is always round. And a Greek guy with a stick figured it out before we even had glass for lenses. That curve under your feet, it's there, right now. You're standing on it. You just can't feel it. Drop one in the comments. What did you once know for sure until one hidden rule changed the question? I read every one.